You're embarrassing her just by being here, old man. Walk away before I make you. That's what my wife's new boyfriend said while flexing his perfectly sculpted arms outside Riverside Community Center after my daughter's piano recital. The same bodybuilder who'd been parading around town with Elena for 2 months, making sure everyone saw his designer clothes and expensive watch. I stood there in my simple button-down shirt and work boots, watching him puff out his chest like some peacock trying to intimidate a wolf. My name is Donovan Pierce. I'm 42 years old, and I spent the last 18 years as a civil engineer for the state of Oregon, designing bridges that can withstand earthquakes and floods. Before that, I was a demolitions expert in the Army Corps of Engineers. I don't talk much, don't need to prove anything to anyone, and I've learned that the quietest people in the room are often the most dangerous. But let me back up and tell you how I ended up facing down a muscle-bound Instagram influencer who thought intimidation was the same thing as strength. Elena and I met during my final year of engineering school at Oregon State. She was working as a pharmacy technician while finishing her business degree. I was the guy who showed up to class covered in concrete dust from my part-time construction job, too focused on my studies to care about impressing anyone. She said later, that's exactly what caught her attention. A man who was quietly building something instead of talking about what he might do someday. We married 3 years later in a small ceremony in Bend, surrounded by the Cascade Mountains we both loved. Elena wore a simple white dress she'd found at a consignment shop, and I wore my grandfather's vintage suit. We honeymooned camping at Crater Lake, spending our days hiking and our nights talking about the life we wanted to build together. For 12 years, we did exactly that. I worked my way up from junior engineer to senior project manager, designing infrastructure that would serve communities for generations. Elena opened her own small accounting firm, helping local businesses navigate their finances. We had our daughter Sophia, bought a modest house in Salem with a workshop in the garage where I could tinker with woodworking projects, and settled into what I thought was a solid, quiet life built on mutual respect and shared goals. But over the past 18 months, something had shifted. Elena started coming home later from networking events. She bought new clothes, changed her hair, started going to a high-end gym called Apex Fitness instead of our local community center. When I asked about it, she said she was working on herself, becoming the woman she was meant to be. The signs were all there, the way she stopped asking about my day, how she'd take phone calls in the other room, the sudden interest in fitness influencers on social media. I should have confronted it directly, but that's not who I am. I observe, I analyze, I wait for the full picture before I act. The full picture came crashing down 3 months ago when Sophia showed me a photo on Instagram. "Daddy, why is Mommy with this muscle man at the fancy restaurant downtown?" The photo showed Elena laughing at a candlelit table with someone who looked like he'd stepped off a magazine cover. Chiseled jaw, perfectly styled hair, arms that bulged against his designer shirt. The caption read, "Dinner with my beautiful queen. Blessed. Power couple. Living my best life." His name was Zane Blackwell, 28 years old, professional bodybuilder turned social media influencer with 200,000 followers. His feed was full of shirtless gym photos, motivational quotes about alpha mindset, and pictures of expensive cars he claimed to own. He specialized in selling fitness programs and supplements to insecure men who wanted to look like him. I spent that night in my workshop, running calculations for a bridge retrofit project, trying to process what I'd discovered. Elena had been having an affair with someone who was everything I wasn't: loud, flashy, obsessed with appearance over substance. In my 20-year career, I'd learned that structures with all flash and no foundation always crumble. But this wasn't engineering. This was my family. When I finally confronted Elena the next morning, she didn't deny it. "He makes me feel alive, Donovan. He's passionate, exciting. You're just there. Always working, always serious, never spontaneous." She moved out that afternoon, taking Sophia to her sister's house in Portland. Said she needed time to figure out what she really wanted. The divorce proceedings started immediately. Elena hired an aggressive attorney who painted me as an emotionally distant workaholic who'd neglected his family. According to her lawyer, I was so focused on building bridges that I'd forgotten to build a relationship with my wife. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 2 decades designing structures to last centuries, but couldn't keep my 12-year marriage intact. What hurt most wasn't Elena leaving, it was losing daily access to Sophia. My 11-year-old daughter, who used to help me with woodworking projects and proudly tell her friends about the bridges her daddy built, now lived 2 hours away. Our weekend visits felt forced and awkward, especially when she'd mention Zane's cool motorcycle or Zane's big muscles. I kept working, kept my head down, focused on a major seismic retrofit project for the Morrison Bridge in Portland. Work was the one place where things still made sense. Forces and loads, stress and tension. All of it could be calculated, predicted, controlled. Unlike human relationships, bridges didn't decide one day that you weren't exciting enough. But Zane wasn't content to just steal my wife. He started showing up places where he knew I'd be. School events, Sophia's soccer games, even the local hardware store where I'd shop for workshop supplies. Always with Elena, always making sure I could see them together. He'd put his arm around her possessively when he spotted me, flex his biceps when reaching for something, speak just loud enough for me to hear him calling her babe or gorgeous. It was psychological warfare designed to make me feel inadequate, to prove that he'd won and I'd lost. Elena seemed uncomfortable with his displays, but she never stopped him. Maybe she enjoyed seeing the quiet, steady man she'd married finally showing some emotion, even if it was humiliation. The breaking point came at Sophia's piano recital at the community center. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, a chance to focus on my daughter instead of the mess my life had become. I sat in the back, proud as always as Sophia played Chopin with the concentration and precision I'd tried to teach her in everything. That's when Zane made his move. As parents filed out after the recital, he approached me in the lobby, Elena trailing behind looking mortified. Sophia was still gathering her sheet music with her teacher. "Donovan, right?" he said, extending a hand that felt like a vice when I shook it. "I'm Zane. I think we should talk man to man." He was even more imposing up close, 6'2", probably 220 pounds of muscle, wearing a fitted black shirt that showcased every ridge of his torso. His handshake lasted too long, his grip unnecessarily firm. Everything about him screamed, "Look at me, fear me, respect me." "Elena tells me you're having trouble accepting the new reality," he continued, his voice carrying that practiced confidence of someone used to getting their way. "I get it. Change is hard, especially for guys your age, but she's happy now, happier than she's been in years." Other parents were starting to notice our conversation. Mrs. Rodriguez from Sophia's class, the Yamamoto family, people I'd known for years in this tight-knit community. Zane positioned himself so his broad shoulders blocked their view of me, making me look smaller by comparison. "Look, I respect what you built with Elena," he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. "But that was then. She needs a real man now, someone who can match her energy, her passion for life, someone who doesn't hide behind blueprints and calculators." I stood there quietly, saying nothing. To outside observers, it probably looked like I was being lectured by someone more impressive than me. Zane seemed to interpret my silence as submission. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, stepping closer. "You're going to make this divorce easy. No fighting over custody, no dragging things out. Elena deserves better than your boring, middle-aged drama, and Sophia needs to see what strength actually looks like." That's when he made his fatal mistake. He actually flexed his biceps while talking about my daughter. I looked at this peacock of a man posing in front of my daughter's piano recital and something crystallized. This wasn't just about Elena anymore. This was about Sophia watching her father get disrespected by a man who thought muscles equaled strength. This was about a community that had known me for over a decade, seeing me as weak. This was about allowing a fraud to win through intimidation and theater. "You're embarrassing her just by being here, old man," Zane continued, his voice getting louder. "Walk away before I make you." But I didn't walk away. I stood there, studying him the way I'd study a structural problem, looking for stress points, weak connections, places where the facade might crack under pressure. "Is there a problem here?" Mrs. Rodriguez approached us, concerned. She'd known our family since Sophia started kindergarten. "No problem at all," Zane said smoothly, flashing his practiced Instagram smile, "just having a friendly chat about co-parenting." But his eyes stayed locked on mine. challenging me to contradict him. I nodded to Mrs. Rodriguez. Everything's fine, just waiting for Sophia to finish up. Zane smirked, apparently taking my calm response as weakness. He put his arm around Elena, who looked like she wanted to disappear. Come on, babe. Let's grab dinner. Somewhere with actual atmosphere. As they walked away, I heard him say just loud enough for me to catch, some people never learn when they're outclassed. I collected Sophia and drove her back to Elena's sister's house in Portland, listening to her excited chatter about the recital. But my mind was elsewhere, processing what had just happened. In 18 months of dealing with this situation, I'd taken the high road. Been civil, focused on Sophia's well-being, tried to make the transition as smooth as possible. But Zane had just declared war. In front of my daughter, in front of my community, he'd tried to humiliate me, tried to make me look weak and irrelevant. What he didn't understand was that quiet doesn't mean defenseless, and some battles are worth fighting, especially when they involve protecting your reputation and your daughter's respect for her father. I spent the next week doing what I do best, research and analysis. My engineering background had taught me that before you solve any problem, you need to understand all the variables. Zane Blackwell had just become a structural integrity issue that needed to be addressed. I started with public information. His social media presence was extensive but sloppy. Between Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, he'd created a digital trail going back 3 years. The pattern was clear. Zane was a manufactured persona, not an authentic person. His luxury lifestyle content showed obvious inconsistencies. Photos of expensive cars taken at dealerships, not driveways. Restaurant meals that were clearly promotional posts, not personal dining. Designer clothes photographed once and never worn again. The watch he constantly displayed was a good replica, but I'd learned to spot details during my years specifying materials for critical infrastructure. But it was his business claims that really caught my attention. Zane marketed himself as a successful entrepreneur who'd built multiple fitness companies. His bio claimed he was a 7-figure businessman who'd achieved financial freedom by age 25. The reality was more interesting. I used my professional database access to run background checks, something I occasionally did for construction contractors. Zane Blackwell had been Bradley Kowalski until 2 years ago, when he legally changed his name. Bradley had worked as a gym trainer in Beaverton, making $32,000 per year until he was fired for inappropriate conduct with female clients. His supplement company was registered as an LLC with 0 reported revenue. His fitness programs were basic routines stolen from established trainers and repackaged with flashy marketing. His multiple income streams consisted of affiliate marketing for products he'd never used and dropshipping cheap workout equipment from overseas suppliers. More interesting was his debt situation. Public records showed 3 collection agencies pursuing him for unpaid credit cards, overdue rent on a studio apartment in Southeast Portland, and a repossessed Camaro from 2019. The expensive lifestyle he flaunted online was entirely financed by credit cards and carefully angled photos. But the most revealing discovery came from his ex-girlfriend's Facebook posts. 6 months ago, Chelsea Winters had shared a lengthy post about her nightmare relationship with a narcissistic bodybuilder who'd used her credit cards, isolated her from friends, and disappeared when she got pregnant and miscarried. She never mentioned Zane by name, but the timeline and details aligned perfectly. Armed with this information, I began formulating an approach. Direct confrontation wasn't my style, and it would only reinforce Zane's narrative that I was a jealous ex-husband causing drama. Instead, I would use precision, the same methodical approach I used in engineering projects. The key insight was that Zane's entire identity was built on public perception. His income, his dating prospects, his self-worth, all of it depended on maintaining the illusion of success and dominance. Like a suspension bridge with a critical weakness, the right amount of pressure in the correct location could cause a catastrophic failure. My plan had 3 phases. Phase 1. Document everything. Zane was sloppy with his fraud because he'd never faced serious scrutiny. I would compile a comprehensive file of his lies, inconsistencies, and legal vulnerabilities. Phase 2. Strategic exposure. Rather than attacking him directly, I would create situations where his true character would reveal itself to the people whose opinions mattered most: Elena, Sophia, and our shared community. Phase 3. Natural consequences. Once the truth was visible, I wouldn't need to destroy Zane's reputation. His own actions would do that for me. The beauty of this approach was its patience. Zane expected me to react emotionally, to escalate the conflict in ways that would make me look unstable. Instead, I would respond like the engineer I was, methodically, deliberately, with long-term thinking that he couldn't match. I spent that weekend in my workshop not building anything physical, but constructing a plan that would stand up to scrutiny. Every detail had to be perfect, every action defensible. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for Sophia's future, to show her that real strength doesn't come from muscles or intimidation, but from intelligence, patience, and moral courage. The foundation was set. Now it was time to begin construction. My first move was subtle but calculated. I knew Zane frequented Apex Fitness, the upscale gym where he and Elena had apparently met. Through my network of construction contacts, I learned that one of my subcontractors, Miguel Santos, had recently started training there after his doctor recommended strength training for a back injury. "Miguel, you've been going to that fancy gym downtown, right?" I asked during our lunch break on Tuesday. "Yeah, Apex Fitness, expensive as hell, but they've got good equipment. Why?" "My insurance company is asking about different gyms for my back injury claim. Mind if I get a day pass sometime this week to check it out?" It was a plausible story. I did have occasional back pain from years of construction work, and insurance companies did sometimes pay for gym memberships as preventive care. Wednesday morning, I walked into Apex Fitness wearing plain gray shorts and a faded Oregon State t-shirt. The contrast was intentional. I looked like exactly what I was, a middle-aged working man who didn't belong in a gym full of personal trainers and Instagram models. Zane noticed me immediately. I was working out on the cable machines when he approached, flanked by two younger guys who were clearly his training partners. "Well, look what we have here," he said, loud enough for nearby members to hear. "Elena's ex-husband trying to get buff. Little late for that, don't you think?" I continued my set, saying nothing. His partners laughed, clearly enjoying what they thought was their friend dominating some random middle-aged guy. "Seriously, Donovan, this is embarrassing," Zane continued, positioning himself so other gym members could see the exchange. "You can't compete with this." He gestured to his physique, "by doing a few cable exercises." That's when I made my move. I adjusted the weight stack to 280 pounds, significantly more than Zane had been lifting, and completed a perfect set of lat pull-downs. Not struggling, not straining, just steady, controlled repetitions that demonstrated core strength built from decades of physical work. Zane's smirk faltered. His training partners exchanged glances. "Construction work builds real strength," I said quietly, re-racking the weight. "The kind you need when people's lives depend on your work being solid." I moved to the next machine, loading it with weight that clearly surprised the people watching. 20 years of manual labor, from concrete work in college to climbing bridge structures for inspections, had built functional strength that didn't need to be displayed but was undeniably real. By Thursday, word had spread through our social circles that Elena's quiet ex-husband had somehow held his own at Zane's gym. Miguel mentioned it to other contractors, who mentioned it to their wives, who mentioned it to Elena's friends. The story grew in the telling, but the core truth remained. The mild-mannered engineer wasn't quite as mild as everyone thought. More importantly, my gym appearance had rattled Zane. According to Miguel, Zane spent the next day at Apex Fitness telling anyone who'd listen about his pathetic stalker ex-husband who was trying to intimidate him. The fact that he felt the need to address it at all revealed how much my calm display of strength had unsettled him. Friday afternoon, I received a text from Elena. "We need to talk about Sophia's birthday party next weekend. Can you meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 2? Perfect. Sophia's 12th birthday was supposed to be a joint celebration, the first major event since our separation where we'd both be present as parents. Elena was clearly worried about potential drama between Zane and me. I arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes early, choosing a picnic table near the playground where other families were spending their Saturday afternoon. The setting was important. Public enough to prevent any real confrontation, but intimate enough for a serious conversation. Elena arrived exactly on time, looking nervous. She'd lost weight since our separation, probably from the stress in Zane's fitness obsession. The designer workout clothes and professional highlights couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders. Donovan, thank you for meeting me. I wanted to talk about Sophia's party, but also about the situation with Zane. I waited for her to continue, using the same patient silence that had served me well in difficult project meetings. He told me about the gym incident. He's concerned you're trying to cause problems. I joined a gym to help with my back injury. Miguel Santos can verify that. He's the one who recommended it. Elena sighed. Look, I know this is hard for you, seeing me with someone new, but Zane makes me happy, and Sophia likes him. Can't we just make this work for her sake? Is Sophia happy, Elena? Really? Or is she trying to make you happy by pretending to like your boyfriend? The question hit its mark. Elena's defensive posture cracked slightly. She's adjusting. It's normal for kids to need time with big changes. What's not normal is her asking me why mommy's friend flexes his muscles when he talks to daddy. What message do you think that sends to an 11-year-old girl about how men should behave? That's when Zane arrived, exactly as I'd expected. He'd probably been watching from his car, waiting for his moment to make an entrance. He strode across the park wearing a tank top and designer sunglasses, every inch the Instagram influencer protecting his territory. Am I interrupting something? He asked, putting his hand possessively on Elena's shoulder. We're discussing Sophia's birthday party, Elena said quietly. Right, about that. Zane turned to me with that practiced confidence. I think it would be better if you celebrated with Sophia separately. This co-parenting thing is confusing for kids. They need to see strong leadership, not constant negotiation between their parents. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd compiled over the past week. Speaking of strong leadership, Zane, I'm curious about your business success. You frequently mention being a 7-figure entrepreneur. Can you tell Elena about your multiple income streams? His jaw tightened. I don't need to explain my finances to you. Of course not. But since you're positioning yourself as a father figure to my daughter, I thought Elena might be interested in knowing that Bradley Kowalski changed his name to Zane Blackwell after being fired from 24-Hour Fitness for inappropriate conduct with female clients. Elena's face went pale. Bradley? Or maybe she'd like to know about the 3 collection agencies currently pursuing you for unpaid debts. Or the studio apartment in Southeast Portland that you claim is your downtown penthouse on Instagram. Zane's facade cracked completely. You investigated me? What kind of psycho ex-husband stalks people online? The kind who designs bridges for a living and knows how to research public records. Elena, would you like to see the documentation? I handed her my phone, screenshot after screenshot of Zane's lies, the fake luxury lifestyle, the stolen workout programs, the false business claims, the legal name change, the debt collection notices. This isn't real, Elena whispered, scrolling through the evidence. It's all public record. Your successful entrepreneur boyfriend makes $800 per month selling repackaged fitness programs and lives in a 400-square-foot studio apartment. The expensive lifestyle you've been impressed by, credit card debt, and borrowed props for Instagram photos. Zane lunged forward, but I was ready. Years of construction work had given me reflexes for avoiding dangerous situations. I sidestepped easily, letting his momentum carry him past me. The difference between us, Zane, I said quietly, isn't physical strength. It's that I build things that last, while you build illusions that crumble under scrutiny. Elena stared at Zane with growing horror as the implications sank in. You lied to me. About everything. Your business, your apartment, your name, your background. Elena, I can explain. You told me you were successful, that you'd achieved financial freedom. I've been paying for most of our dates thinking you were just being generous with your money. The humiliation was complete, but I wasn't finished. From my folder, I produced printed copies of the complaints filed against Bradley Kowalski at his previous gym, the collection agency notices, and the bankruptcy filing he'd submitted 18 months ago. Elena, there's one more thing you should know. 6 months ago, a woman named Chelsea Winters posted about her relationship with a narcissistic bodybuilder who used her credit cards and abandoned her during a pregnancy scare. The timeline matches exactly with when Zane started pursuing you. Zane's face went from red to white. That's not, she was crazy, obsessed with me. Just like you're claiming I am now, I said. Interesting pattern. Other park visitors were starting to notice the commotion. A couple with young children moved to a different picnic table. An elderly man walking his dog slowed down to see what was happening. Elena stood up slowly, my phone still in her hands. "Zane, is any of this true?" His silence was answer enough. "Get away from me," she whispered. "Get away from us. Don't call. Don't text. Don't come to my work. If you contact Sophia, I'll file for a restraining order." "Elena, please, go!" she shouted, loud enough that half the park turned to look. Zane looked around at the audience he'd attracted, realized his carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time, and walked away. No flexing, no threats, no final tough guy posturing. Just a defeated man whose lies had finally caught up with him. Elena sat back down heavily, still scrolling through the evidence on my phone. "Donovan, I'm so sorry. I thought he was strong, successful, everything I wanted. I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid, Elena. You were vulnerable after our marriage fell apart, and he's a professional manipulator. That's what predators do. They identify people who are emotionally isolated and tell them exactly what they want to hear." We sat in silence for several minutes, watching other families enjoy their normal Saturday afternoons, while we processed the wreckage of the past 18 months. 6 months later, Elena and I were sitting in the same park, this time watching Sophia play soccer with her team. Not together romantically. Too much had happened for us to simply resume our marriage, but as co-parents who'd learned to respect each other again. "Coach Martinez thinks Sophia might make varsity when she gets to high school," Elena said, pointing to our daughter's aggressive defense against a much taller opponent. "She's got that quiet determination," I replied. "Doesn't need to be the loudest player on the field to be effective." Elena smiled. "I know where she gets that from." The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, but it was different from the contentious process Elena's original lawyer had envisioned. Once Zane was out of the picture, Elena had fired the aggressive attorney and we'd worked out custody and property division through mediation, fair, rational, focused on Sophia's well-being. Elena had started therapy to understand how she'd become vulnerable to Zane's manipulation. She'd discovered that her dissatisfaction with our marriage had been real. I had been emotionally distant, too focused on work, taking our relationship for granted, but her solution of seeking validation from a fraudulent Instagram influencer had nearly destroyed everything good in her life. "I got a partnership offer from the state transportation department," I told her during halftime. "Senior structural engineer for the coastal bridge replacement project. It's a 5-year commitment." "That's amazing, Donovan. You've wanted that position since college." "It would mean relocating to Astoria, about 3 hours from here." Elena's face fell. "What about Sophia? You just got joint custody." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. The position comes with a significant salary increase and full benefits. There are excellent schools in Astoria, and Sophia loves the ocean. I was wondering if you'd consider relocating too. Fresh start for all of us." She was quiet for a long moment, watching our daughter score a goal with a perfectly placed shot to the corner of the net. "Zane messaged me last week," she said finally. "On Instagram, from a new account. Wanted to explain everything and get back together." "What did you do?" "Blocked him immediately. But it made me realize something. I spent so many months chasing excitement and passion that I forgot the value of stability and trust. Zane was all flash and drama. You're..." She paused, searching for words. "Boring," I suggested with a slight smile. "Solid, like one of your bridges. Built to last. Reliable in storms. Maybe that's not exciting enough for a romance novel, but it's exactly what Sophia and I need." After the game, the 3 of us went for pizza, just like we used to do when we were still a family. Sophia chattered about her goals, her teammates, her plans for summer vacation. Normal family conversation, free from the tension and performance that had defined our interactions during the Zane era. As we walked back to our cars, Sophia grabbed both of our hands. "Dad, are you and Mom going to get back together?" Elena and I exchanged glances. We'd discussed this possibility during our recent conversations, approaching it with the same careful analysis I brought to structural engineering projects. Maybe, sweetheart, I said, but slowly. We're focusing on being good co-parents first, then seeing what else might be possible. Good, Sophia said matter-of-factly. Zane was kind of fake anyway. His muscles were real, but everything else about him was pretend. Out of the mouths of babes. 6 months after that conversation, Elena accepted a job with a CPA firm in Astoria. We bought houses 3 blocks apart, both walking distance from Sophia's new school. We're taking things slowly, dating like teenagers while sharing custody of our daughter, rebuilding trust and intimacy without the pressure of trying to fix our old marriage. I learned that quiet strength isn't about being passive or avoiding conflict. Sometimes it means standing up to bullies who mistake volume for power. Sometimes it means having difficult conversations with people you love, and sometimes it means admitting your own mistakes while refusing to be defined by someone else's lies. Zane, meanwhile, moved to California and reinvented himself as a lifestyle coach named Xander Black. The internet never forgets, but it has a short attention span. He's probably manipulating some other vulnerable woman, building another house of cards that will eventually collapse. But that's not my problem anymore. I'm too busy building things that last, bridges that will serve communities for generations, a relationship with my daughter that grows stronger every year, and maybe eventually a second chance with the woman I never should have let slip away in the first place. Real strength, I've learned, isn't about flexing your muscles or dominating others through intimidation. It's about knowing who you are, standing up for what matters, and having the patience to let the truth reveal itself in its own time. Some battles are won not by fighting, but by simply refusing to be broken.